And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC-TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And in this studio this morning, running for family court judge in Chemung County, Bryan Maggs. Thanks so much for being on the program.
Hey, Frank, thanks for having me.
We're just talking on the streets. A beautiful fall day, and everybody's ready for the Wine Glass Marathon.
A couple of people ran past me.
Yeah, it's impressive, right, at this hour. So I want to talk about, obviously, the campaign, but let's start with the easy question that we always do when we talk with judges. Tell us about your background.
I got an interesting background. I moved to Elmira after law school. I started working in the appellate division. There was a now deceased Judge Crew was a DA here, and Judge Crew worked up at the appellate division where I started. And he brought me down to Chemung County where I started working for Judge Castellino. Okay. Judge Castellino was a former family court judge. He worked at Supreme Court at the time. I worked with him and then Judge O'Shea for a couple of years. And then from there, I went on to start in the county attorney's office. Worked in family court for about 5 years, 6 years until Weed and Wetmore got elected as DA. Okay. And then I got a promotion to county attorney where I supervised the family court attorneys. Oh, okay. I did that for another 11 years. And then the last 5 years, so this is going on.
I was going to say, how long have you been in this?
Yeah, this is 24 years total.
Wow.
So for the last 5 years, I've been the attorney to the legislature. Oh. So I've seen every aspect of both the court system and the county government.
And you look at your experience and in your background specifically. I wanted to ask, because doing a little research, how do you think that your military service will help in this job, the family court judge?
It's a great question. One thing is, I'm very proud of my military service.
Of course.
It's not really something that I talk about or tend to brag about, but I think one thing about military service that is universal for everybody, regardless of politics, is to serve in the military, you serve other people. Yeah. You put other people first. You put the values of America first. And as the family court judge, that is what's important, is putting what's important to people first, putting the community first. Sure. So just the virtue of military service in and of itself, I think, qualifies someone to be in the position. Mm-hmm. In the military, though, I've done a lot of things that impact family court. Oh, sure. While I was up at Fort Drum with the 10th Mountain Division, this is during the Iraqi Freedom War that we had. Right. I served as the counselor to their child advocacy team and their domestic violence team. So I worked closely with the Jefferson County Department of Social Services and helped women that were victims of domestic violence and children of the military members that were suffering child abuse. Just the same. It's a military system that they have, similar to our family court system.
Oh, that's very interesting. Because, just in general, we talk about you're 18 years old when you enlisted. Going back to your experience in general, you say unique, and I'm looking at some of your background, and I'm someone that tries to be involved in the community a lot. And I'm on quite a few boards, and I'm not saying that braggadocious, but I know it takes up a lot of time. So you're on all this community involvement. You obviously got a job. Why did you decide to run for this position?
So what's really, really, really important to me is helping people. And the best times that I've had in my legal career was when I was in family court. I wasn't sure how I would like family court back when I started working in family court 23 years ago. It's a tough court to be in.
I'm sure.
But what I noticed is the impact that you can have on children and families, and that's really where the future of the community starts. When family court is typically, especially for kids that are getting in trouble, for example, that's the first court system where you have a chance to try to divert them away from the bigger, badder things that they might do when they grow up, try to fix mental health problems before they become substantial in leading to, for example, the drug and the homelessness problem that we have. Yes. So the ability to intervene at an early level, that's what brought me to family court.
Now, let's explain to people, because it's a little different than years past when they go in to vote for family court judge. How will the ballot look? What is the scenario itself, just as we near early voting on the 26th?
Well, as you can imagine, for those that live in and around Chemung County, we needed to add a second family court judge. Yeah. Family court cases and our dockets are overloaded. Mm-hmm. So this year, for the first time, there's a second family court seat on the ballot. it's a vote for 2 elections. So we have 3 individuals running for the 2 seats, and on the Republican line, it's myself and the incumbent judge, Mary Tarantelli.
And so you can vote. I want to drive that point home. You can vote for 2 out of the 3. Now, you're obviously out campaigning. And by the way, I love this, and maybe you can explain why you do this. You were showing me what you hand out when you talk with voters, and one is a pocket constitution.
I ordered those pocket constitutions because I believe in the Constitution. It's the foundation of our democracy. It's the reason I joined the military. I was a kid, and I was, this is back in the late 70s and early 80s, and I see all these Vietnam veterans walking around, and I know the trouble that they had back when they came back from Vietnam. It's a different world today, but back then, I really enjoyed talking to the Vietnam veterans. That's what really inspired me when I turned 18 to enlist in the Army. And just understanding what America meant. I even remember the bicentennial in 1976, how important it was. I was a really little kid at that time. But I've always loved America. I love the Constitution. I love the founders. And I'm a family-first conservative.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I think that's a great idea because so many people seem to be, at certain times, a constitutional scholar that I don't think they always read it. So this is nice to have in a pocket constitution. So I appreciate that. When you are talking with people and you give them the Constitution, talk about your experience in your career, what are voters saying to you? What are their concerns?
Well, number one is they appreciate receiving the Constitution.
Right, yeah,
I'll tell you that. So more than anything, as soon as they get that, they say, geez, do people even know what this means anymore?
I know that.
But believe it or not, the biggest concerns that people have today concerning really our community and how family court can impact that, the drug problem, the lack of respect that kids tend to have towards authority, just the change in the way that society is evolving, and homelessness. As a singular issue, homelessness becomes a big topic when I go door to door.
And do you believe, looking ahead, if you are elected to family court judge, what will be the biggest issues you face? Do you believe that's what it'll be? Drugs, homelessness, those type of things? Not to put words in your mouth.
Well, drugs is a big problem. For me, it's accountability. Accountability is the key to everything. So whether it's kids being accountable to their obligations, to school, to the community, disregarding authority, those sorts of things. Accountability is huge for parents as well. Oftentimes, kids getting in trouble. It's not that you don't want to blame the kids because everybody makes their own decisions and you have to face your own consequences. But parents are a big problem. So educating the parents, giving them the services they need, and that's really what I learned during my time as a Department of Social Services attorney in family court. I prosecuted hundreds and hundreds of child abuse and neglect cases and serious abuse cases, as well as juvenile delinquency. And oftentimes, family court, I'll just say, family court it's a court of services. It's a services court. It's not a punitive court. Although you can put people in jail or in detention, it's really about trying to get people the services that they need so that they don't recur and rehash the same problems that have brought them there in the first place.
So that it's got to be an interesting job in that, and almost an emotional job. Really, it's got to be. It's kind of got to be a difficult job to have, but it's such an important one. Is that something that you think about?
Well, so I have a very, very steady temperament. It's not that I'm very emotional, and I think I've raised 4 daughters, so that's something else about me. So my youngest is 18, my oldest is 25. I've been through between that, and I've coached youth for about 20 years.
Yeah, I saw
in softball and soccer, boys and girls. I've seen just about everything that you can see, and being able to approach situations that are very emotional, especially for the parties involved. There's nothing more emotional to people than their kids and their money, and that's what's involved in family court. When you're talking about child support, when you're talking about how much time you get to spend with each parent, who gets them on the holidays, all these kinds of things. Emotion is a big part of it, but also it's important to break through that emotion and focus on what's in the best interest of the children.
We've got a couple other things. I want to mention this because I have a list of your endorsements, and I would ask you to read them, but it's only an hour show. You've got to be very humbled by how many people came out and endorsed you.
Well, I am. It's amazing to me how many people I've dealt with. Everybody on I've got a list of 50 names on my letterhead. So that's the list that you're referring to. There have been some people that have come to me and asked to be put on the list that I had to politely decline putting them on the list because I couldn't make it longer. This isn't really about people endorsing me in a political sense. Everybody on that list I've worked with at a personal level, and I barely even had to ask them. Many of the people asked me if they could be put on the list, but everybody from, I know I consider at the top of the list, Tom Santulli, who was very, very important to me. I was his county attorney for 11 years until he retired. We got
Sheriff Schramm.
Sheriff Schramm.
A good friend of Frankly Speaking. Yeah.
So, if you ever talk to Sheriff Schramm, one of my most emotional cases that I ever did, Sheriff Schramm at this time was an investigator before he was even the undersheriff. It was it was a case where an infant was found dead in a crib, and he did the investigation, and we brought in the medical examiner, and we were essentially prosecuting for child abuse the parents that we believed committed that crime.
Yeah.
And he was a fantastic witness, and that's the reason that he's on that list. Is we got to know each other 15, 18 years ago during that case.
Yeah, well, very impressive, and I appreciate you sending that along. So just before we go, I know judge races are a little different. How can people help, and how can people find out more?
Well, you can help by being good citizens
and voting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You go out and vote.
Yeah.
It's really important that you do your research on the candidates. Temperament, judicial philosophy, experience, and experience means all sorts of things.
Sure.
But go out and vote. That's very important.
Of course.
And obey the law so we don't have to
so
be
we
in court.
don't have to see you. Just before we go, because it is an important role as family court judge, and this is in Chemung County, and because it's also a 10-year term. So what would you say to voters before they head to either early voting or out to the ballot box?
Look me up.
Yeah.
Chances are very good that I have many lawn signs. I have many endorsements. I've got chances are very good that you know somebody that knows me.
Okay.
I've personally been to over 4,000 houses during this election season, and there's going to be about, I don't know, less than 40,000 people that vote. So probably 1 in 10 houses I've been to, handed out a constitution, handed out some materials, talked
That's
to people.
great.
In addition to that, you know somebody that knows me. Ask them about me. I think you'll like what you hear.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show. I hope we can talk again before Election Day.
Thanks, Frank.
All right, we'll be right
Appreciate it.
back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC-TV Big Fox. Stay with us.